Okay, away we go. So, Nikki, on behalf of PLSA.
Yes, hi. So my name is Nikki Alvarenga. I am a senior, and I just want to say thank you to Dr. Roth for putting this on for us. And I also want to say thank you to all of you who are participating. It really means a lot to us that you can take time, I know, out of your very busy schedules to come and speak to us and tell us about your experience and answer any questions that any PLSA members may have. So I just really want to say thank you for that.
Okay. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Brad Roth. I'm professor of political science and law, and I'm faculty advisor to the Pre-Law Student Association. And I have the great privilege of having a whole army of former students who are always good sports about being available to current pre-law students. And so put together repeatedly programs with our former students, former undergrads here who are doing various things. And we haven't done a Zoom thing in a while, but I figured that it made sense given that there are people in law school in far-flung places who would not be able to relate their experiences in person, that this would be a good opportunity to have people explain what law school is like in the places where they are, and what the overall experience of law school is, how they got from where they were to where they are, and so on. And so we have Marie from New York University Law School. We have Gabrielle from Indiana University Bloomington. We have Marcella from Washington University St. Louis. We have Kyle from the University of Michigan. And we have Andrew from Michigan State University. So a good spread of folks. And so I will say as much of the background here as possible, but try to spur things along. So perhaps Marie, maybe you can start and introduce yourself and say a little about where you are and what you're doing.
Okay. Hi everyone. I'm really glad everyone's here. Thank you, Dr. Roth, for putting this together. And as well to the PSLA members. Sorry, I'm a little tired. But so yeah, I am a 2L at NYU. I had a bit of a non-traditional path. I transferred from Wayne Law. So this is actually my first year at NYU. And yeah, I'm going into public interest. So I'm mainly focused on public defense jobs and that realm, which is quite different than the corporate realm in terms of paths. Is there more I should talk about now, or should I pass it on?
You can pass it on and we will get back to you. So,
Okay. All right. So
all
I'll
right.
pass it on.
All right, Gabrielle.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gabrielle or Gabby. Either one is fine. I am a 3L or a third year law student at IU Bloomington or Mauer. I am also focused on public interest. However, I'm on the other side. I am looking to go into prosecution. Right now, most of my experience has been in SVU at the prosecutor's office here in Indianapolis. That is a different city than Bloomington. It's about an hour away. I just want to make that clear. There is another IU law school in Indy. They are also great. And I also have a unique experience at Bloomington, and I am an education policy minor. So I did a 4-class program where I focused on education law from K-12 all the way to higher ed. So that's one of my favorite paths as well.
All right, Marcella from Washington University, St. Louis.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us. Glad to be speaking with you all. My name is Marcella. I'm currently a 2L second-year law student at Washington University in St. Louis. Currently, I'm more litigation focused, really liking corporations, work regarding contracts, but I haven't exactly pinpoint exactly what I want to do when I do graduate, but those are my current interests. And I have a traditional pathway to law school. I did take a gap year, but after applying, I moved out of the state, came here, and so far it's been great.
Okay. Kyle from the University of Michigan.
Hi, everyone. Good to be here. Like Professor Ross said, I'm a 1L at the University of Michigan. Still sort of figuring out exactly what I want to do, but I'm pretty sure I want to do something related to clean energy, whether that's working at a firm or doing something in public interest. I'm not totally sure yet. I graduated from Wayne State in 2022. I studied political science and mathematical economics. And then I took a gap year, worked for a year, and then, applied and went to Michigan. So happy to answer any questions about the application process or Michigan specifically or anything like that.
Okay, and Andrew from Michigan State.
Hi, my name is Andrew. I'm a 2L at Michigan State University. I took a non-traditional path to law school. So I worked in the private sector for 10 years, and after finding out that I wasn't really happy working in healthcare, I decided to go to law school. So I'm happy to be here, and right now I'm kind of undecided of where I want to go, but I do think I have some interest in litigation or something in the criminal realm.
Okay. So maybe the first question, the kind of most obvious one, is why did you decide to go where you decided to go? What were the other alternatives that you were weighing at the time, and why you chose the particular alternative that you had? And has life where you are actually come to resemble what you ever imagined it would be, or is it better, or is it worse, or do you have regrets, or any of that? So anybody can start here.
I'll start. So when I applied to law schools, I applied to a lot randomly. But I did have my safety schools. I had my dream schools in there. I ended up having my choice down to Wayne State, Michigan State, and IU. Those were the three schools that gave me equal scholarships, and they also were the main ones that accepted me and didn't waitlist me. I ended up choosing IU because I had visited their campus in the past, and I thought their campus was absolutely gorgeous. Bloomington does resemble more of a college-built town, so kind of an Ann Arbor if you're thinking of it in comparison to Michigan. So I really do enjoy the campus. They have some really fun opportunities down here. I will say there was a point where I felt like I regretted coming down here. My first year, I had COVID and I didn't have any family around me to help me out. So it was a little scary being all on my own, but I learned very quickly that at IU, the students are your support system and they are there for you. We do call it Mauer High at a point because we're all kind of close and you can find your friend groups very quickly. But it is very, very supportive down here, so I don't regret it anymore.
Okay, who's next?
I guess I could go next. So I chose Michigan State because I didn't want to leave Michigan. So I really had no interest. So I applied to the big three in Michigan and got waitlisted at one of them, rejected at the other, and got accepted at State. And Michigan State actually made it known that they wanted me. So, and that's mainly why I went with Michigan State instead of the other options.
And how does that feel now, looking back on it?
Like I'm happy. Like I am content with being at Michigan State. So it has its ups, it has its downs, but ultimately I'm happy with this decision.
So East Lansing is sort of college town USA. Is it a good place to be in law school?
Yes and no. Obviously, like when you're in law school, you kind of have to stay away from all the undergrad shenanigans that kind of go on. Just because, especially your 1L year, there's just so much going on. Not saying that you're not going to have fun and like live your life. You need balance, but I think a lot of law students stay out of the undergrad territories and they kind of live with it like a couple of miles out to like avoid it and have their peace. And the ones that do live near the scene, I guess, they're just a different breed. I don't know how they do it, but good for them, you know?
Okay. Who's next?
I can go next. So I was actually a reapplicant to law school. My plan was to go straight through. I applied to, a pretty broad swath of law schools and got waitlisted. I think I applied to like 13 total, got rejected by one, waitlisted by 11, and accepted by the other. So not exactly like the stellar outcomes you would necessarily hope to have. So I was gonna go to that one school I got accepted to, but kind of had a crisis at the last moment and decided to take a year instead. I always knew I really liked Michigan, so I reapplied and got in the second time. And yeah, no regrets since. I'm sure most people are familiar with Ann Arbor. It's definitely a pretty cool place to live. And yeah, I really like the law community. Nothing really bad to say about it.
Next up.
So I was between Washington University and Wayne State. Both schools offered me scholarships, which was very nice and very useful. I decided ultimately to go with Washington University because at the time I applied, it was a higher ranked school, and after doing some research, I fell in love with the campus, its reputation. The faculty members here are very well established. They're experts in their fields. And for me, it was an easy choice to leave the state and come here to pursue the best education that I could get to be the best lawyer that I can be. But leaving home wasn't easy in itself. It was the first time I was away from my support system, and that was really hard going into first year of law school. Just like trying to balance everything and living on your own. And I would say though that the friends I made here made that a lot easier for me. The student body here is very collaborative, and I found out that people here are very willing to help you. And so that made everything a lot easier, moving out of state and coming here for my first year.
Okay, so for me, one of the main reasons I wanted to transfer was to get out of Michigan, because as I got through my 1L year, I realized that a lot of the opportunities I was interested in were on the East Coast. And that I just wanted to live in a bigger city. So when I applied mainly to schools on the coast when I applied for transfer, and I ended up transfer is really they're really odd cycles. There's few transfers, so it's really hard to get any kind of data on what works and what doesn't work. So I don't think you can base much off that information. But for transfer, I knew that if I was going to transfer, I wanted to preserve some sense of community. So when I started to get results in, I started to get into some places, waitlisted at others. I wanted to go somewhere where there was a large transfer class, because it's like since I've been here, I've made friends with other 2Ls that are not transfers, but my core group of friends are all other transfers, because you're coming into a school where friendships have already been established. And as any 2L will tell you, that first year trauma bonds you to the people close to you. So I think that was really hard for me, leaving the first years that I had gotten so close to, and the faculty that I had gotten so close to go somewhere where people already had their friends, people already had professors that they could count on for recommendations. And I was kind of odd one out. So going to a school that had a large class of transfers was really important to me. And then NYU has something called the LRAP, which is a loan replacement program or loan repayment program for public interest students that makes it really attractive for public interest, because I think it's important to note that if you are considering transfer at some point, or you're not, they do not, transfer schools very rarely give scholarships. And I actually don't know of any schools that do, other than maybe, I think Georgetown might give like some financial aid, but that was a big consideration for me, was giving up scholarship at my previous school for paying full tuition somewhere else. So NYU having that loan repayment program was a really big factor. And I'm really happy. I love it here. I found like a really strong public defense community. So
Marie, you're actually in the enviable position here of being able to compare law schools and be able to compare the experience of being here at Wayne Law and then going on to a school that is, of course, nationally recognized as one of the elite institutions. So, perhaps you could tell us something about what the contrast is like and what the experience has been like making that change.
Okay, so I think for me, the biggest difference is I don't think, I was really scared that it was going to be more competitive in the sense that people were going to be not very nice here. That's, I think, the sense that I had gotten of elite schools in the past. And I haven't had that impression. People have been very welcoming, have been very kind. I do think that I wasn't fully prepared. I don't know if this is a New York thing or a school thing, but the level of privilege that I've encountered here as opposed to Wayne, and people who tend to be a little bit out of touch sometimes in the way that they like approach things, has been kind of a culture shock for me. But I'll be honest that in terms of the education, I don't know how different. Property law is property law, criminal law is criminal law, constitutional law is constitutional law, wherever you learn it. I think there's more of an emphasis on theory here and I'm not really sure why that is, but my professors at least have been more focused on policy than doctrine, but that could also be a factor of being a 2L rather than a 1L. I'm more relaxed than I was at Wayne because I know that the odds of not getting some opportunity are low. And at Wayne, I think I had amazing opportunities in Michigan, but wanting to leave Michigan, I felt like there's a lot of pressure to perform really, really well to have those same opportunities that now I can have without, if I have a bad day and I have a bad exam, it doesn't end my career, or I still have those opportunities. So I think that's the big difference. In terms of workload, I think either way, it's pretty rough.
So I will fill in something relating to what you said, which is why some law schools have more of a theoretical orientation than others. And it has to do with the stratification of law school education, that there is this much greater fixation on the part of law schools that are outside that elite set of law schools to much more focus on the bar, much more focus on seeing to it that the people are prepared for legal careers very directly. The sense at the top law schools tends to be people are going to figure that stuff out for themselves. And also a sense that there's a difference. One of my law school professors once put it between task executing and task defining roles, and that the upper echelons of law schools are really preparing people to go into areas where the big picture tends to be much more relevant. And so this is their own self-conception. They're educating people for the kinds of decision-making roles that are going to set policy and establish jurisprudence. And that's not so much what people are thinking about in other kinds of law schools. It's also a resource question, and New York University, like other universities at that level, including the University of Michigan, just has the resources to bring in lots of people who are not focused on law practice as such. Jeremy Waldron's never been in a courtroom. He's one of the leading legal philosophers in the English-speaking world. You don't get that in that many places. So that's something that does significantly contrast where you are now from where you've been, notwithstanding the fact that I appreciate the vote of confidence for the Wayne Law faculty, which I think is every bit as competent as any faculty at that elite level. Others looking to chime in on any aspect of this.
I don't know. To kind of go off of what she said about like contract law is contract law. Like we all learn the Hairy Hand case, or in property, we all learn about the Broach case, you know, and there's similarities. There's the material that you learn at one law school is going to be the same at the other law school. You're going to learn about the statute of frauds. You're going to learn about the Recording Act and all this other stuff. And it's basically, where do you want to go and where do you feel most comfortable at? Because everyone is going to read the same material. It may be a different case, it may be applied a little bit differently, but the same facts, the same material, and the same concepts and theories are applied across every law school.
Yeah, I would just piggyback off of that and say at WSU, a lot of my classmates are very big law focused, looking to work in major cities like LA, New York City, Miami, Chicago. And WSU is a school where if that's your goal, then it's a great school to go to. I thought I wanted to leave the state, and then I left, and then I realized I actually wanted to go back home and stay in Michigan. So, but the great thing about that is that even if I didn't, I have the option to be out of state, to work out of state. And so I would say going to a school out of state, especially one that's higher ranked, just opens up your chances of getting those big law jobs in those major cities. But if you want to stay in Michigan, schools like Michigan State, Wayne Law are fantastic options.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sort of to piggyback off that, I somewhat paradoxically chose Michigan law because I knew I didn't want to end up in Michigan. But at the same time, I wasn't exactly sure where I wanted to end up, at the end. So a big factor for me picking Michigan was that it's not in a major legal market, which means that has pretty strong ties to just about any legal market you could want to go to. So I think factoring where you want to live your life is a pretty big consideration you should make when you're picking a law school.
I want to kind of contrast to that. So I chose IU not knowing where I wanted to end up. I didn't know if I wanted to be in Michigan or in Indiana. I was kind of hoping when I left Michigan, I would find that out. I now want to come back to Michigan, but it doesn't hurt me that I went out of state for school. I do want to make that pretty clear as well, because either way, they're preparing you for the general bar. They're not preparing you for state specific. While I'm in Indiana, I'm learning laws from all over. I'm even in a state constitution law class that's teaching me about the differences between the different states. We do focus on Indiana's constitution in that one, but overall, we focus on all different states. And in practice, when we're looking at jobs to apply to, at least IU is really great about giving you options in other states, surrounding cities. I knew about 10 people in my class who went and did a study abroad program in Washington, D.C., a couple who went and did a study abroad program in Paris to focus on international law. So I do think that while choosing a law school is a really important decision, I don't think it's going to be indicative on where you end up. You can end up anywhere, no matter where you go. Depending on what firm you want to go to, that might be a different option. That might be a different question. But I do think if you're looking at out of state, you can definitely come back if you want.
And I guess like the thing is, if there's anyone that's interested in patent law or things like that, I guess any school you go to, really, like patent law is such a niche field that if you do well enough, you could get a job in Chicago, California, wherever, because it is such a field. It is a field that you need a STEM background. You need to pass a patent bar. So even if you don't get into a top 20 or a top 50 school, I wouldn't be discouraged, because there's plenty of people here at Michigan State that are patent lawyers and they've gotten jobs all across the country or internships. So I wouldn't look at the rankings as being the end all be all. And I think there's this false idea that the LSAT like puts people in the correct category. There's people that have scored in the top 10 percentile, like in the top 10 schools, that are going to a 20 ranked school for the scholarship and things like that. So you're still competing against the best minds at your law school, even if you don't think that you are, but like they're there because of their own reasons. So people are rejecting schools to go to a school that they can afford all the time.
So in general, wondering about, now that you've had an opportunity to sort of see the contrast between undergraduate education and law school education, what sort of perspective that gives you, and what sorts of skills that are distinct that you have found useful in law school, and what sort of skills that you had the opportunity to develop as an undergrad, that you either are happy that you did develop or wish you had developed, or what, opportunities that you might have availed yourself of as an undergrad now in light of how you've seen law school education play out.
I would say the one thing I wish I would have learned more in undergrad was to read closely and to learn punctuation and grammar and sentence structure, because it's so important in law school. Those little details cost points. And when you do your writing advocacy class or brief writing, every comma you miss, every period you miss, or the blue book period that is messed up somehow, some way, those all cost little points. And I wish that I would have paid a lot more attention to that in undergrad, because writing is so important in law school. And if you don't think you're going to be writing and reading all the time, you're in for a rude awakening. But the one thing that I do appreciate is that in undergrad, when you talk to your professors and you get an idea, learn about where you can strengthen your skills at, because all that stuff is very applicable. And take a grad level course in undergrad if you can before you graduate, because that'll give you an idea of what is the demand that's really required, and taking one course versus 4 or 5 courses will be a lot easier, and you would appreciate it so much more.
Thoughts?
I would like to add that something that I think would have been so helpful is figuring out how to apply knowledge. In undergrad, a lot of exams, from what I remember, is just like memorization and regurgitation. Law exams do not work like that at all. You'll get like a huge fact pattern, and even if you have knowledge about general laws, it's not going to be helpful unless you know how to actually apply that knowledge. And that's definitely a skill that I had to learn to build. And it's the skill that you need on law exams. So I would say just figuring out how to apply concepts, maybe making up your own hypotheticals for certain problems, and just starting to transition from memorization to application.
So I think for me, one of the big things was understanding that the writing, I wish I understood how little my skills in writing for political science would transfer over to legal writing. Um, it is not the same thing at all. And so I guess learning how to write concisely and put information into the simplest way possible, as opposed to the elaborate stringy sentences that I like to do personally, and that work well for anything that's theory or literature or political science, but not at all for law. That was a really big struggle for me, is learning to go from one to the other. Also, I took a class that was really helpful for the LSAT. It was called Informal Logic. So if there's any logic classes, I would definitely, I did community college before transferring to Wayne undergrad. So, and it was there. So I don't know if Wayne, I'm sure there's something like, it was a philosophy class, but it was incredibly helpful for the LSAT.
Also, if you can, take a class with Dr. Fino for con law in undergrad. It's a very tough course, but you will thank yourself later when you take the con law course in law school, because all that material really will stick with you. And that is actually a really good way to figure out if law school is the right course for you or not. And I'm truly grateful for her and her class.
I would back up what Marie said. There's really, I don't know if there's anything more important than being able to get your thoughts out in a concise and conversational manner. I took a lot of political philosophy courses with Dr. Helfer in undergrad, and ironically, that was where I learned how to write short. So, getting good experience to, some actual substantive writing courses where your writing is going to be truly critiqued and, take advantage of those opportunities to improve.
So I guess for me, there were two things in my undergrad that really stand out to me when I look back. One was an honors course my first year at Wayne State, where my professor told me, don't read every single word, take your pencil and just move your eyes along with it. You'll read much faster. Do it, because some of these cases are going to be 50, 60 pages, and it's going to be hard to get through. If you can't do that, I highly suggest using Speechify, because it will read the cases to you and you can follow along. And if you're super tired and can't keep your eyes open, that's super helpful. The other thing was taking Professor Roth's class. I know that sounds really cheesy, but I stayed up till midnight working on a paper for him, and I emailed him at midnight crying, saying, I can't do this. And he helped me figure out how to formulate the argument I was trying to get to when I felt that there was no evidence, no support for that. That entire experience helped me realize that sometimes you have to rely on parts of the case that you don't think are the strongest in order to make the strongest arguments. And that's a hard thing to wrap your mind around if you're like me and you kind of see in black and white, because you can't see in black and white in law school. Very often you have to see in that in between or the it depends stage. So I thought those were both really big experiences there.
Other thoughts? So there are a lot of activities in law school which might superficially seem like they're extracurricular activities, but they're really more co-curricular activities. And they often provide the important contacts that you're going to want to have in your career, or provide opportunities to have certain kinds of experiences that are going to be important for your resume going forward, and put you in a position to apply for summer jobs, which of course are a distinctive aspect of law school education. So I wonder if people wanted to speak to anything like that.
Don't do it. No, the activities are great, but it gets overwhelming. I have friends that are on law review doing mock trial. We have a TPI, moot court, all this other stuff going on, and then the law clinics, and some are doing 3 or 4 different activities. on top of taking 16 credit hours. And you just have to find your balance and know who you are, and go with that pace, because you could get overwhelmed, and that's where a lot of torture happens. So I think being very self-aware is something you need to do. And plus it's a competition. So people are competing for these spots, and you try out, you may make it, you may not make it, and that's just the name of the game. And you kind of just get put where you want to be put in, and you kind of ride out the storm. But if you put yourself in more than one thing, you only have yourself to blame for that torture. That's all I got to say.
I'll piggyback off that a little bit. At IU, I have tried 2 extracurriculars and 1 semi-extracurricular. We have down here the Protective Order Project, where you can, as a student, help victims of domestic violence apply for protective orders in the state. And that's a very rewarding opportunity. However, it is very time consuming and it is very emotionally draining. So you do have to learn the balance. The other one we have the opportunity for, or I was at least able to participate in, was outreach for legal literacy, which sounds like you're going to go teach a bunch of people about the law. You're not, you're teaching 5th graders about it. And it's a lot of fun. And it is a huge smile and laugh at the end of the week. But it's also very draining because it's driving to a school, spending an entire hour there, preparing for an hour beforehand. So I do agree, you really have to be able to know what you can handle and what you can't. And be careful with those semi-extracurriculars. If you have the opportunity to do them for class credit, maybe take them. But down here for a while, our school pushed journal, which is where you can help edit journal submissions for the Indiana Law Journal. And you could also do moot court. And for a while, they pushed both of them at the same time. And that's a really, really big load to take on. And students thought they were required to do both because of how it was pushed. And a lot of people burned out really fast in their 2nd year because of it. I was lucky enough not to fall for the journal one because they did require 3 semesters and I did not want to do that for 3 semesters. So my advice is just know what your actual requirements are so you can draw your boundaries as well.
So for extracurriculars, I really enjoyed getting involved in stuff my 1L year, because most groups that involve 1Ls will not ask you to do very much, and it's a great way to meet people. And if you're in a group that ever asks you to do a lot as a 1L, leave that group because they should know better. And I did stuff in the Criminal Law Association at Wayne Law. And that was really great. I got to put together a panel, and now I get to put that on my resume, and that was a great experience. I did join Law Review here at NYU. It is the bane of my existence. It is an awful experience. This time that we've been on Zoom, I've gotten 3 emails from them. So ultimately, I think 5 years from now, I'll be happy to have it on my resume, because I am interested in maybe clerking and in maybe academia, and I know it can be helpful for that. If that was not the case, I don't really know if I would do this again. I think that it's a lot of work, and most journals do not allow you to or do not pay you or give you credit. Depending on the school. I know here we do not get credit until our senior year, or sorry, 3L year. And while you do learn a lot, I'm not sure that there's not a less grueling way to learn this information. I will say that if I was doing that and another extracurricular, I think it would be unmanageable. Just that has been manageable. We're not allowed to do moot court and law review. I know people, some of my friends from Wayne Law are doing moot court and law review at Wayne Law, and I think they are champions. I do not suggest that you do that. And I'm glad that it's not allowed here. Because I think that you have to know I think grades are important, and I think that prioritizing that over extracurriculars has a tendency to work out better, or even prioritizing getting experiential credits and real life experience, so that you can get those kinds of things on your resume and kind of figure out where you want to go based off of that. I just from doing clinics and things like that, I have a much better idea of what the right fit is for me than through law review. Other than I do not want to edit citations for a living. So that's all.
So the advice that we get from our career counselors is that nobody's going to offer you a job because you're on 18 boards of various student orgs and things like that. Especially coming as a 1L, a lot of this stuff is just for career exploration or to get exposed to different parts of the law. So most of it's just there to throw on your resume so that you and a prospective employer have something to talk about. And yeah, you really shouldn't do something because you feel like it's important. You should do it because you're genuinely interested in it.
And I will kind of go off of that as well. The legal field itself is kind of trending towards community service and how much you give back to the community. And that's really emphasized with character and fitness. So the one thing that Michigan has is that there's volunteer opportunities with expungement fairs, and being able to do things like that is actually a lot more useful than some student orgs. Like overwhelming yourself with a student org 1L year, it's really fun. I guess you get to be with your other students and you get to know who they are, but ultimately that's kind of a 1L thing. It kind of falls off when you become a 2L. And then you might become an e-board member, but it's really to help the 1Ls find their places, and having that one homeroom is really more important than having 10 homerooms.
I would agree with what everybody said, balance being the key. For example, I knew I did not want to do law review, so I applied and put a secondary journal, Global Studies Law Review, as my first choice, and I got into that. And that's been a more manageable load for me. At WSU, a journal does count for credit. If it wasn't, I don't know what I would have done, but that's great to have that. And if you're an e-board member, usually you get maybe like 2 credits as well. So there definitely is an incentive here to do that. But I would say do something that you believe isn't gonna completely be something that's gonna make your experience at law school terrible. Just try to balance things, and once you do that, you'll get an idea of what you can manage and what's feasible for you.
Any other thoughts? I guess another thing that everyone wants to know about is how to get into law school, and you all did extraordinarily well along those lines, so you're well positioned to give people advice about the process, for anything to do with the LSAT, anything to do with assembling an application, preparing to assemble an application, what sorts of things you ought to be thinking about in years leading up to it, anything about the process of getting in.
I think the one thing you should do when doing your law school application, and actually Professor Roth actually helped me out with my personal statement, diversity statements, you have to kind of walk a fine line between being completely vulnerable and giving enough information, right? So sometimes we want to spill our guts, but you could say what you need to say with less words, and less is more, especially on a application. You may think that you're pulling on heartstrings. You're really not. The recruiters know what they're looking for, and they know that through their writings, through the scores, through the way you present yourself. So play your strengths, recognize your weaknesses, and kind of emphasize that throughout your writings, because your GPA is your GPA, your LSAT score is your LSAT score, and you have to recognize it and put it in the application the best way you can that best fits your mold.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Really don't discount how big of an impact your personal statement can make, as well as any other supplemental essays that the school might require. It was basically the only thing that changed between my first application cycle and my second application cycle. Make sure whatever you're talking about is genuine. The first time I wrote my personal statement, I wrote about something that I felt like the schools would want to see. It was a good why law story, but it wasn't necessarily like what I truly felt in my heart. And the second time around, I wrote more genuinely, and I think it came through.
I'll agree with everything that's been said. The personal statement's super important. One of my acceptances, I got a phone call and all they talked about was my personal statement. So again, don't discount that. As for the LSAT, I tell this to everyone who's preparing for it. The LSAT Trainer by Mike Kim on Amazon for like 40 bucks. It's a paperback book. It helped me get my score up 10 points. And it was recommended to me. It was fun to get through. He does recommend a couple of practice tests that you get and you work through. I would also suggest if any of you still have a Nintendo DS, I know I'm dating myself a little, Professor Layton. It's this game where all you do is logic puzzles. All you do is logic games, but it makes it fun. And I promise that's going to help you a lot too, or any other logic game that you might enjoy. If they're testing you with puzzles, just play it. It's a way to study without knowing you're studying.
I would say personal statement for sure. When I had my interview with WashU, a lot of the questions were focused on my personal statement. So I would suggest just making sure that's really, really concise, really straight to the point, and really genuine. And I would also suggest getting good rec letters from professors or employers, specifically professors and employers that can shed light on your personality. Personality is a huge factor. I think schools are looking to see if you're somebody who can, come to campus, join the community, be likable, contribute. So I think finding good people to write you good rec letters is also important.
Don't have much to add. I think it's been covered. I think the personal statement's crucial, as well as the rec letters. I will say that I had character and fitness issues that I needed to address. That was really daunting for me. I did not know, because they say they don't care, but like they care. And it is considered, I think. And I think that if you know someone who's a really good writer, who's a professor or a third party who can look over your materials, especially if it's something as sensitive as a character and fitness addendum that's explaining whatever the situation is. When I had a friend who looked over all my materials when I transferred, and she rewrote things in a way that really because I was so close to the issue and I was so scared. I think the way that I was conveying things was not as good as it could be. And when she moved things around for me, it made a world of difference. So I think if you have stuff like that, that's a little bit closer to the chest, have someone look over it that's going to be more impartial than you are.
Yeah, I would say the one thing that law school emphasizes, and I think even in the legal field, is take ownership of every single mistake that you've done. And if you do poorly in something, or if you make a mistake, don't blame it. You have to take responsibility. Taking responsibility is really big. And that shows in the addendum you do, that shows in your personal statement. It shows that it gives you a chance to explain a poor grade. They look for that, and I think that's one of the major factors. That's why personal statements are so powerful, because it shows that you're willing to take responsibility.
Did anybody else besides Marcella have an interview? Interviews are pretty rare in this process, right?
I had an interview that was terrifying where they give you no feedback after they ask you a question. So they just ask you the question and then you give your answer and then you get no feedback whatsoever and they move on to the next question. And it's within 10 minutes and you don't get to see the interviewer. And then when it's over, it's just over. And if they didn't get through all the questions, they didn't. And you can see on, like, you talk to other people, you find out like what the list was and whether you finished the questions. And that was really awful.
Mine was more conversational. It was just a back and forth dialogue, but I could tell the interviewer was trying to make sure she did hit the pertinent questions. But I would say compared to Marie's experience, it was more conversational for me.
I want to say this was not NYU.
Yeah, I had interviews for other law schools, but not for Michigan.
All right, well, I think it's time to open the floor here to what questions people have. And we have a reasonably large group here with us. So please either do the hand raise thing in the from the reactions on the bottom, or just otherwise announce yourself if you can. Questions? Our group. Okay, Rania.
Hi, my name is Rania, and I transferred to Wayne State from Washtenaw Community College around, well, this is my first semester here. I want to go to law school, and I was thinking of applying for the 2026 like school year, but because of the fact that I still have some like credits to get done, it's not feasible. So I was thinking of taking a gap year, and I was wondering, what are some things that you should be doing in that gap year other than studying for the LSAT?
Do something in public service, try to work in a law firm if possible, try to volunteer. Literally anything that you could show that you're interested in the legal field will speak volumes. And I can't emphasize this enough. Like, volunteering now is huge. It's not only good for you, but it shows that you care. And law schools like seeing that because they want to see how you're willing to contribute to their community and how you would be an asset, just not for the school itself, but the legal field. And schools are focusing on that. So do what you can to like show that you're developing as a person, and I think the gap year would be wonderful.
During my gap year before law school, I tried networking with as many Metro Detroit attorneys as possible. And I ended up reaching out to them even during my first year here at WSU. And I think just, building a network, having people that, you can build relationships with and maybe ask questions to, that would be helpful, having that going into law school. So I would say network, also volunteer is very important, and yeah, just try to build some relationships within the community.
Well, to contrast that, I suppose I didn't do any of those things. The job I worked in the gap year had nothing to do with the legal field, and I don't think it really hurt me at all. The one thing I will say is if you can find an or some form of opportunity in the legal field, that would be a good barometer for if you're actually interested in a career in law or not.
Other thoughts? Okay, Gustav.
So, hello, my name is Gustav. First of all, thank you guys so much for putting this on. And then Marie, I had a question for you if possible. Yeah, so basically just you mentioned that you transferred both for college, from community college to university, and then you did the same thing with law school from Wayne to NYU. Is that something you thought about doing when you entered Wayne State? Because I've read that the idea of like entering law school with the intent to transfer is challenging just because you can't predict your performance. Is that something that you factored in? Or were you just like, I'm matriculating here, and then if the opportunity presents itself, I'll go further?
I didn't really know what law school entailed. So when I started at Wayne Law, I had no intention of transferring. It wasn't, and I think people are right when they say that you shouldn't go in with a mentality of I'm here to transfer, because then if you don't end up doing as well as you wanted to, you're gonna be really hard on yourself. You're not gonna feel good about yourself. You're not gonna have connected with your peers as much. You're not gonna have gotten as involved. Um, and you could rob yourself of a really great opportunity. For me, it was really, I when I got my fall grades back and I realized that this was maybe an opportunity, and I had also realized that I was very interested in the Bronx defenders, and that are here, and that I wasn't going to have as much opportunity, to go to the East Coast from Detroit.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Questions? People all zoomed out these days. Nikki.
This one is a little bit specific, and basically, how did you maximize, or like how did you get more words out in the character and fitness like addendums? Like, I'm really struggling to write why I got a speeding ticket. I can't get past, a paragraph on I was wrong, shouldn't have done it. So
Really, that's kind of what they're looking for, right? Like you're acknowledging what happened, you're
Mhm.
taking ownership. You don't need to go into so much detail where you're throwing yourself at their feet, right? It's acknowledging that you got a ticket, it's acknowledging that this was wrong and the steps that you're taking to prevent it, and that's how it kind of goes. It shouldn't be more than a paragraph or like paragraph and a half. If you honestly do go over that, you're probably saying too much.
okay.
I would second that. I'm also curious as to, curious to what school is asking about speeding tickets. That's wild to me. But I would say shorter is, I don't think you have to make it long. The NYU application was the shortest application of all my other applications because they are very strict and very strange with what they require. So I had to cut down my materials quite a bit. And I think that played in my favor. I think when things are concise, it's just better.
Oh, and if you think you're gonna put something in there to help soften the blow or make yourself look like it's in a better light, you probably want to just take that out because they don't care. They just, like I said, you did it, you took responsibility, and this is what I'm doing to change it. That's all you really need to say.
It's interesting because it was with like with Wayne Law, and she also told me to write about, because I had asked about it before in a different presentation with this lady in admissions, and like this recent time she was like, yes, write about that, write about hit and runs that happened to me. So that really confused me because I don't know how I would write how, if I didn't do it. Yeah. So I think I'm gonna look into that again.
I would look into it again. What I will say is that the reason that this is important for me to understand, the reason that they want all this information is not so much for them as it is for when you pass the character and fitness for the bar exam. They're going to look back on your character and fitness for law school, and they want to make sure that everything you're disclosing to them at the bar, you disclosed before. And the main issues you're going to have at character fitness in the bar is if something shows up there that you didn't disclose to the law school. So that's why people err on the side of disclose everything, disclose everything, disclose everything, when it might not actually be a requirement that some things are disclosed, and it varies, yeah, by state and by school.
And the whole addendum thing doesn't end when you get accepted to law school. Like, you have to keep the school apprised of any, I don't know, criminal offense that you've done or whatever may have happened in your life that may affect character and fitness. You should tell the school. They're not going to kick you out. They just want you to disclose it. And they're like, yeah, err on the side of caution at all times. So I think you're taking the right steps now, because that just shows that you're being forthcoming.
Other questions? Anybody? Okay, Nadine.
Hi, I just had a quick question. So basically, I'm a sophomore who will graduate in 3 years. So thinking about the LSATs kind of, I just wanted to get everyone's opinion on if there's like a specific timetable they followed when studying, if they did like online classes, how it worked for them, and just get like study methods, opinions, and things like that.
I will jump in on this one. When I studied for the LSAT, all I used was that book that I talked about earlier. And in that book, Mike Kim does set out 3 different study plans, one that is a year long, one that's 6 months long, and one that's 3 months long. I opted for the 3-month one, and I did take the LSAT between my sophomore year, or not my sophomore, sorry, my junior year of undergrad and my senior year. That was what my political science advisor talked to me about, and kind of it made sense to me. Gave me an opportunity to retake it if I wanted to. But that's pretty much how I did mine. I did a lot of practice tests, but that's how I studied as well. I didn't do any online classes though.
I used a Seven Sage online website. I'm a visual learner, and having audio also helps me. And they have these very helpful videos, and some of the videos are even somebody in real time showing how to like solve some of the practice sets that are in the exam that you just took, that you watch after you took a practice exam. I found that pretty helpful. They also have like a built-in study schedule that you can customize if you want. So I solely used that.
I was a fan of LSAT Demon. I like the bluntness of them, and kind of they just told you what you needed to know, and they just made it so simple to see that I thought it was a great tool. So that's what I used.
I used well, I started with a book. I don't remember what the book was, but it was just like a learn everything about the LSAT type thing. And then I moved on to I think I used Magoosh, which is like a online trainer as well, mainly because I ran out of practice tests. I would say the strongest thing is just take practice tests under time conditions and make sure you're like legitimately going over them and like thinking about why you got questions wrong and trying to incorporate that into future ones. I also took the LSAT on the summer between my junior and senior year. I do think for the most part, like you don't need like a full year of studying for the LSAT, so long as you're sufficiently, like as long as you're dedicating enough time to the studying while you're doing it.
Oh, and that's the other thing too. Know yourself. If you need accommodations, get the accommodations. Honestly, law school's challenging enough. And it's going to show on the LSAT, and you're just going to hinder yourself if you don't get it. Honestly, there's do what you need to do for you to succeed. If you don't think you could handle the LSAT during the regular time conditions, and you know that you could do better, reach out, see what other resources are out there for you to be able to succeed, and don't be afraid of it.
people have said, what I would have said, I did it between my junior and senior year as well. I think I studied for 6 weeks. I used Power Score, which is a test prep. They've got books and they've got a course. If I could go back, I would have taken a diagnostic before I paid for a course, because I thought that I would need to do a course, because I looked at a test and I looked at the logic game section and I freaked out and I was like, I'm not going to be able to do this. I used my savings on a course, and then when I took a diagnostic, I realized that what I needed was to really focus on logic games, and diagnostic is like just taking one test under testing conditions to see how you score in the different sections. Turns out the section I really struggled in was logic games, and I did fine on the other one. So I ended up paying for a course that did a lot of review for all sections when that's not what I needed. And I could have saved myself some money and time, and honestly, I probably would have done better, because by the time I finished the course, I was so done with LSAT in general that I was just ready to be done. So I think take a diagnostic and see if there's 3 sections in the LSAT, see which ones, if there's one that you're struggling with more than the others, then 7 Sage I know would have been really good, because it can really focus. It'll, like, I think they've got AI, right, that will basically drill you on the section that you're struggling with.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, were there other questions? Gustav, you had your hand raised earlier.
Yes, if I could just ask one more for Andrew, if possible.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Thank you so much. So with you being non-traditional, I was just gonna ask, like, when you're writing your personal statement and whatever it is that brought you back after your 10 years in healthcare, how did you find like meshing that into the personal statement? And did you think that was advantageous, or was it just a career you thought about previously? Like, basically, is the job that you had what led you to go into law school? Or did you think about it previously and after working realize it's what you wanted to do?
I always wanted to go to law school, but life is life, and sometimes it takes you on a roller coaster. But if it's meant to be, life will allow it to happen. Um, so when I wrote my personal statement, I wrote about kind of the challenges that you overcome, the things that you've done in your life. Where have you grown as a person? I guess like it's personal, but yet at an arm's length, kind of like you're letting them in to a certain extent. It's kind of hard to explain, but yeah, you want to talk about your challenges. You want to talk about certain things that have made you who you are, and that's kind of things that I've that I talked about. But I think that's very, very important, is discussing why you are who you are today.
Okay. Thank
I'm
you so
not sure
much.
if that answered your question, but
No, it did.
okay.
Thank you so, so much. And then Kyle, just briefly, the UMich Law Library, how does it feel to study there, if you do it all?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, the reading room's beautiful. Makes you feel like you're in Hogwarts. So
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, further questions?
How's the weather in New York?
It's great. I love walking to class in freezing cold weather at 8 a.m. It's so fun. Less cold than Michigan though, but no cars, so.
Yeah, that's what I heard. New York's a little bit warmer.
So the news is filled with stories of controversies on university campuses and in law schools over all manner of contemporary issues. I'm wondering whether those things have manifested themselves on your campuses, and how that's affected the experience of being in law school.
I plead the fifth. I mean, like, yeah, you have all walks on your campus, right? In your school, and you have to be mindful of the different ideologies, the different backgrounds, and these are people that are gonna be with you for 3 years or so. You just have to be self-aware, and there are certain things if you don't feel comfortable discussing, you could just say, I don't want to discuss it. And sometimes being silent is so much more because law school is kind of like middle school. I wouldn't even say high school. It's very in your face. Yeah. The world is gonna come into your school and you're kind of the only thing that can stop yourself from getting involved. And if you want to get involved, you did it to yourself.
So I'll speak as for NYU. Things were not great. And after the Hamas attacks, we had the head of our student government made a statement in our weekly newsletter. Someone screenshot that statement and put it on Twitter, and it got circulated and it made the news, which led to that student losing her offer from a big law firm. And as well as the school said that they were going to look into disciplinary action, and then all of our student government quit, which means that we don't have bar review anymore, which bar review is on Thursdays. People meet up at the bar and there's free drinks. So that really affected my it made things really tense on campus. And I think that one of the great things about higher education is that you do get to exchange ideas with people. I think that especially living this in New York has been interesting because I live right next to Washington Square Park, and there have been either a Palestine protest or an Israel protest pretty much weekly basis since October, which has been interesting because you get to hear from both sides. And I think that there is something to be said for getting to hear from professors about this. The faculty has been really great at, I've been able to talk to some faculty about their views on what's going on from an academic standpoint. And that's been really cool. I think that's been a really big blessing to take things out of like the media frenzy. And that's not something you really have access to if you're not in higher education most of the time. And then what Andrew said, I think you have to be you have to be much more careful in law school than I've ever had to before with what you put on social media. People are losing job offers. I know that the place I want to go work at, that I'm interning at this summer, only hired a fraction of the interns that they usually hire last year, this past hiring cycle, because they made statements that resulted in them losing donors. And because they're mainly funded by donors, they are not hiring as much, which is now affecting my job prospects as well as the people that they represent as a defense firm. So I think that coming into law school and having wiped your social media and having locked everything down and knowing when it's best to just keep your thoughts to yourself and try to educate yourself on things without making it public is probably a good idea.
Also, when you're in your 1L year, everyone is stressed out. Don't make matters worse. Like, it's one of those things where the demands of law school aren't going to stop because of world politics or something that occurred on campus. Like, they're going to accommodate, they're going to do what they can to help ease the impact of it, but the demands are always going to be there. And the one comment that you say that you don't think is wrong could be wrong. So you just have to be conscious because you could really snowball someone's academic career. And that's not something you want to live with, I don't think.
I'll add on. I agree with everything that's been said so far. Be careful what you say. I will say that Indiana is a little less diverse than I think any of the universities you are all coming from. It's definitely a lot less diverse than Wayne State. So what IU has done with these moments and these protests and these conversations coming out about race, because we did have actually a speaker come to Mauer and speak more so against Black students, which was very harmful for our school. And so they intentionally put on a celebration of diversity at the same time of that speaker. But at the same time, the school used it as an opportunity to learn about the First Amendment, learn about the rights that campus speakers have. They've used it as an opportunity to speak about students' rights on campus during their protests, when police should and should not be involved. We've used the recent gun violence in very many states to discuss gun rights, deepening the conversation about the Second Amendment. So our law school has put a lot of effort into making lemonade out of the lemons life has handed us, especially in a campus that's not very diverse. They're trying to bring that attention to those issues so we at least are educated about them before going out into the world.
Other thoughts?
I would just add that your reputation in law school is going to follow you even after you graduate. The people that are your classmates are going to be your future colleagues. So when you are exchanging dialogue with your classmates, like the others have said, feel free to step back if it's a conversation you don't want to be in. But just keep in mind, everybody has different viewpoints, and at the end of the day, you want to just make sure that you're putting your reputation first and that you're being cognizant of what could happen down the line. If you have bad links to some people, you might need them in the future for whatever reason. Because like I said, legal field is connected. So I think that's important to keep in mind.
If I can just add one more thing I just thought of, I'm sorry. No matter how mean a judge is towards you, do not be mean back towards the judge. Just don't do it. It's in the legal community, judges can say what they want. You cannot disrespect a judge. It's very, very hard to get to that position, to not want to argue back, but you just got to do it.
Anything else on this point or any other question people might have?
I would say the biggest shock when you get into law school, be prepared for a very hands-off approach with professors. It's not that they don't care. They want you to analytically think about what's going on. And when you approach them, like they want to see that you know the material or your questions kind of on point with what's going on. It is very different than undergrad. But they're not being cruel. They want you to learn and be self-sufficient because that's what the legal field is. It's you learning and you struggling with the material, and then you being able to come back and ask a pretty clear question of what your thought process is. And so when you think your professor is being cruel or they don't care, the chances are they do care, but they want to see you just learn it,
Any other closing thoughts, words of wisdom from our panelists?
I'll hop on that, but I'll also add, don't be afraid to tell your professors if you have something big going on in your life. If there's something you feel you need accommodation for, an open dialogue tends to be better than just letting things fall to the side. If you aren't coming to class prepared or you haven't done the readings, talk to your professor about if they want you to tell them that, because some professors will randomly call on you. And if you're not comfortable being randomly called on, get comfortable with it, because at least in your first year, it's going to happen. I would say other than that, don't skip your readings. Don't skip the readings. It's so beneficial to actually do them, no matter how many times people tell you you don't have to. It's helpful.
Other thoughts?
I think really quick, I want to say if you're considering law school, I make sure you're considering it for the right reasons. There is a large population of students in law school who are there because they watched Suits or Law and Order, and because they didn't know what they wanted to pursue, or because they wanted to chase prestige, or to be able to flex. It's not worth it. There's other careers that make good money, and that do not require this level of debt, this level of education. Most of law is sitting behind a computer, reading and writing and talking to other lawyers. I think that there's so many of my peers that I've met, especially people who don't have a gap year and who just go straight through, who did not realize this. And even knowing this, sometimes it's a shock to me how little I actually get to do anything as substantive as I'd like to do, and how much of it is really just reading and writing. And I think it's important to know that and to come into law school knowing that this is what you want to do, because it would be a shame to go through 3 years of school and all that debt to realize that this is not the right path for you, or that there's something else that you're better suited for. And I think everything works out the way it's meant to, but still.
Okay, any other final words? All right. Well, I want to thank our panelists who have very graciously devoted a substantial chunk of their time when they're in the midst of doing all the busy things they've been talking about. I know that everyone has greatly appreciated your willingness to answer questions and impart your wisdom and experience on all this. So thank you very much. And as I said, this recording will be posted, and we'll get word out about that. And meanwhile, I will stay on for a little while if the panelists would like to hang out and catch up a little if they have some time, and if other people want to ask specific questions not in the group, I'll turn off the recording. And anyway, thank you all very much and have a good evening.
Thank you so much, everyone. We really appreciate it. And thank you, Dr.